Today, we are honored to have with us Shantha Maheswari Sekhar. She's a global technology leader and a true champion for purposeful leadership. With over 25 years of experience, Shantha has been recognized as a chief AI officer and a board leader in the age of AI. She received multiple awards, including the Global Inclusion and Diversity Champion Award and the Equality Award for her relentless commitment to advancing equity in the workplace. Beyond her corporate role, she mentors startups, advises boards, and inspires thousands through her thoughtful leadership series, Soulful Sundays and Purposeful Fridays. In this podcast, we will explore Shanta's journey, her insights on AI and innovation, her passion for diversity and inclusion, and her vision for the future of leadership. Shantha, welcome. We are so excited to have you at the Divershefy Inspiring Leaders Podcast.
Thank you, Sylvia, for having me on this podcast.
So let's start by sharing a little bit about your journey from the PSG College of Technology to becoming a partner in one of the big consulting firms. Tell us a little bit about that.
Thank you, Sylvia. So, yeah, it's been a long journey from PSG to partner. It's like a point to point ride, something like that it feels. I would say I think it's been a journey filled with gratitude, lot of lessons learned. More than all, I would say, I think personally for me, to transform every single day to be a better person, because across this journey, there has been things that I knew, there are things I did not know, there are things I've learned, there are things I've failed. In fact, to start with, one of the example I also wanted to share is IT has been a dream from a school that I was in, and that was basically my higher school degree. And the first journey to computer was actually in one of our small government labs. And I had a brief exposure to it and simply fell in love with it. In fact, to the point that my brother has played a very critical role in actually getting me various parts of the computer. And I actually assembled my machine. And when I assembled it, it worked. And by the way, without a manual. So I would say, I think from that journey to really going into the college and really not necessarily getting computer science as a primary focus of education, I did my electrical. But I think then getting into the dream of IT and then carrying on till today, I think has been a huge privilege for me. So I would say, I think it gave me three lessons. One, it's all about client first obsession. I think that's been a great learning for me, learning from leaders, mentors, and a lot of peers that I've worked with. Being very intentional on learning, career, opportunities, decisions, because even at times there are decisions during this journey I've made as a family, I've made as a leader. I think it was very, very important to be very intentional about it. And more than all, I think the one that really keeps me smiling every day is lift as you rise, as a very important mindset that I've learned to really, work with your team and bring up your team and the community that works alongside. So I would say maybe that's probably the journey I can talk a little bit about it.
Well, thank you. I think this lift as you rise is really also the ethos of Diversify. And thank you for becoming part of Diversify recently. We're very happy to have you as a new member. And
Thank you.
it's an important step for not just in your own career, but going beyond to help others succeed. Thank
Absolutely.
you so much for doing that.
Thank you.
So, what does purposeful leadership mean to you, and how has it guided your career?
I think, in my view, firstly, I think the purposeful leadership comes from within. All of us can learn a lot of things from around us, but I think it has to come from within. So, to me, I would say I think there are four characteristics that defines purposeful leadership to me. One, I would say probably first and foremost is a very strong compass, my own compass of values, my own compass of identity, my own compass of belief system. I think that's very important in my view as a purposeful leader. So the compass, I would probably attribute it as the first one. The second attribute I would probably say is connect the dots. It is very important as a leader and especially as a purposeful leader not to solve everything by yourself or something you can't as well. So it's very important to connect the dots, whether it's in different parts of the organization or it's in different parts of the ecosystem. The ability to connect the dots to solve it for the larger intent, I think, is very important. So I would say attribute connect the dots as one of the other attribute, or rather the second attribute. The third attribute is consistency in my mind. It is very important to stay at it. It is very important to, keep the conviction of why it matters. I think that's going to define a lot of things in terms of the various aspects that happens along with it. So it's very important to keep the consistency of why it matters on the very core of whatever you do. So I would say I think that's very important. And many people tell me this about me. So I'm sharing that also as an attribute, courage to challenge. So the courage to speak, courage to challenge, courage to say an alternate thought. By nature, I was not that person at all. So if people have seen that as an evolution in me, I would say probably it's a great learning. It's a great opportunity. So I would attribute courage to challenge. So in my mind, purposeful leadership is all these four attributes together. And all four of them have played a very important role, whether it is in terms of asking for an opportunity for a role, or whether it is a large transformation that I had to do for a client where I really had to connect the dots across the organization, or for that matter, sometimes there are very complex projects and there could be issues, challenges. It's always important to be really at the very core of why it matters to you, why it matters to the firm. So I would say all these are four lessons learned, and also I would attribute that as very important characteristics of purposeful leader.
Thank you. I think the courage to challenge is the one that stuck most with me. And I actually feel in these days that is something we see not a lot of and would love to have more of in this world.
Agree.
Um, Absolutely. And actually, it's some attribute that is very important also for board members, especially independent directors. It's very important that they are willing to actually voice what they see as a challenge, what they see as maybe not working in the company or
Absolutely.
on the board. And so that is a very critical part of being a board director, in my opinion.
Agree, agree. Yeah, you may not be the popular person in the room, but it's
Yes,
important to be said and it's important to be voiced because it matters and it has to be voiced. Yeah, I
yes.
absolutely agree with you. Yes.
So moving on to technology part. So you've been deeply involved in AI adoption and in AI governance. So what excites you the most about AI's potential and what concerns do you have? Or should leaders in general keep in mind?
So I would say, I think, see, AI has been actually in the industry since 1950s, right, in its various forms. The only thing that has not always worked for AI is either the associated technology or the associated computing power for us to really unleash the power of AI, right? Or sometimes we say, right, some things come too soon before it has to come. But I think we are at the time where we are, where I think the ability to unleash the power of AI with its computing power, with the hyperscale cloud technologies, or with the associated industry ecosystem readiness for such aspects to solve large signature issues. I think it's the best time that the power of AI can truly be unleashed, and we already see many examples around the industry, on variety of aspects. What amazes me in particular about AI, there are so many attributes, but I think if there is one that I need to call out is really the amazing aspect of AI on the ability to see context over command. What I mean by that is, I think we're all used to in IT or in technology, we're all used to issuing a lot of commands for solving various problems, repeatable problems, and those kind of things. But I think the power of AI amidst all other technologies is the ability to add a context to it. So if you give a context to it as to this is the context in which I'm looking for this is the context in which I'm looking for these various correlations, these 10,000 parameters. And if you're able to bring that context over just the command, I think the ability for it to be truly amplifying my aid, now whether I'm an executive leader or whether I'm a board leader or I'm a doctor or I'm a judge, I think the power of amplifying that for me as that that leader or that agent or a doctor or a judge, whatever that I am, that is, I think, is super amazing. And if we are able to apply it for those broad signature issues that is truly, magnified in the world today, I think that's like really, really amazing. So context over command, I think that's something that just super excites me on what we can do for the world, what we can do for our clients. At the same time, what concerns me is also that, see, again, even though, yes, from the time of the 1950s to now, there are a lot of surrounding technologies that has emerged. Still, I think there are so many variables, right? There are so many unknowns. There are so many regulations. Even within AI, there are so many things that's still emerging. And there are platforms and systems and policies and multiple companies doing variety of things. So there are still a lot of landing that needs to happen with respect to what can happen with AI and what are the various aspects. Definitely, there is a lot of progressive nature. So, what also concerns me as equally is our ability to build a very strong design architecture on whatever we are building, whether we are building it in a startup, whether we are building it in a large enterprise, we are building it in as an industry solution, the ability to be able to build a very resilient design architecture, keeping such variables, whether it is the ESG parameters, whether it is, the policy parameters, the regulations, the after effects of something that you do, the accountability of the issues that can happen as an after performance. Some things you don't even know what AI can do as it learns. So the fear of unknown is also something you have to build into this, design architecture. So I think when we advise clients or when we talk on this topic, that's one thing that constantly, keeps at the back of my back. So that's something I would think as a concern, I would say.
Yeah, I think many of us have a concern that that machines or robots or AI would take over and make decisions on behalf of human beings and decide that human beings might not be the wisest thing to have around.
I would always think, I think to that attribute, you're absolutely right in terms of how we are all thinking. Um, yes, AI has the ability to do a lot of these autonomous and self-learning models and all of that. I think that also brings a lot of accountability to the people who are designing it, right? Whether we are large enterprises or whether we are startups or whichever arm of the community that we are, as somebody who's building AI or AI solutions, I think it is also an equally an accountable responsibility we have for us to be able to make sure that there is a very strong human governance on top of it, right? So there's always a human governance on top of things, including the autonomous vehicles that keeps running, right? So I was in San Francisco and you could see so many autonomous cars actually running on the road and testing and everything else. So it's very important, I think, to keep a very strong human governance um, for any advent of whatever has to happen, right? So there's always an accountability at the end of the line in terms of
Yes.
safety, in terms of what we are building. So I would think even more a higher order accountable leadership is necessary from a governance standpoint.
Yeah, you're also advising organizations, in terms of AI as a chief AI officer. And how do they balance innovation and that kind of responsibility?
Yeah, I think that's a good question and also a very practical question as we keep talking to clients. In fact, I would add the dimension I just talked about, right? So it's also about balancing innovation with responsibility and also accountability.
Mm.
I would probably add that also into that dimension of balance. So while all of us, I mean, across industry, there are so many of us advising clients and all of that, and each one of us have our own, frameworks and policies and standards and tools, including the, industry standard policies and maturity maps and all of that. And I think they're all good levers for all of us to keep using it from our conversations for clients and all of that. But I would say when I do these conversations with customers, even for internal transformations, in my mind, three important principles run. Uh, and especially, I also sit on many of the governance boards for some of those decisions as well. So, three important dimensions run in my head. One is very important question is a very strong, healthy assessment of what can you build versus what should you build. So the can versus should has a very strong design principle, as a very strong healthy assessment, I think is very, very critical, especially in the world of AI. I think this can versus should. because you can always get very happy about some of the shiny objects and the cool pet projects that you all do and get carried away with it pretty intensely sometimes. So I think it's very, very important for us, especially when we are advising clients or when we are advising for stakeholders, very critical in the boards for us to think that healthy assessment can versus should. The second thing that also is very, very important is in the olden days when we used to advise clients, we actually used to say you should have a very lean governance. I think lean is important, but I think today we need to have a very strong, accountable human governance more than ever before. And this accountable human governance should have very strong combinatorial skills. It's no more about just a few leaders who broadly understand the industry and all of that. I think we really need a very accountable human governance with a few divergent skills, if I can say, very strong purpose leaders, very strong digital strategists, very strong risk ethic leaders, critical industry thinkers who have an ability to kind of cross pollinate it for what it means to industry. Why should you even do it? And what happens if you don't do it? And things like that. So I would say, I think very strong, accountable human governance is necessary. And maybe I'll reinforce one more point that I said earlier about the concern for AI, right? The strong design architecture, health, resilience. I think that would be another element. So, in my mind, while we have a lot of frameworks and tools, these are three very important grounding principles, which becomes a very important conversation element for clients and even for some large internal transformations as well.
You also bring this sustainability into this picture. So sustainability and technology. So how does that shape the future of business? The bringing the sustainability angle to technology.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. I think I also wrote some recent articles on this convergence. So in my mind, I think, see, if you look at many of our organizations, even the clients, right? I think some of us have taken separate, sustainability reports, separate balance sheet reports. Some of us publish independent, corporate reports, which are built for purpose and value and things like that, apart from the standard P&Ls and balance sheets. So, in my mind, the future of businesses and the future of the business models that will shape and the forces that all of these have to come is at a very strong convergence of maybe I can say a tetragon business model or something like that, like, where profitability, purpose, sustainability, and technology, I think all four dimensions have to really come together with human at the core. And I think that is that accountability matrix, bringing all the force together for what an organization should stand for and integrating all these different aspects into the very core of the balance sheet or the very core of their purpose reports. And that transparency, in my mind, is going to be very critical. And I see that as the shaping. Also, particularly, see, I think today, if you look at sustainability and the conversations on technology, more often technology conversation related to sustainability is always seen like, technology is a depleter. For example, when you build a large scale AI model, or when you build large data centers, there is always a conversation about, that being very resource intensive, and which is true. It generates a lot of carbon emissions. So unless you innovate and change to a clean energy model, you're going to have that challenge, right? So the I would think the conversations have to change where technology becomes a sustainability accelerator for the world, and thereby the innovation along with it with respect to bringing sustainability and technology convergence becomes very, very critical. So the future should see, for example, smart city with AI interfaced, maybe the lighting system, or for that matter, the smart city with respect to, HVAC efficiencies. There is a whole lot of things that can be done with respect to green technology integration. And overall, it should be seen that, technology is actually augmenting sustainability as an accelerator rather than a depleter. So that is why I feel that convergence is more and more strongly necessary, and people have to see it together. The profit, the purpose, sustainability, and technology, that convergence has to be seen together. Unlike the individual conversations that most of us are having, be it even in the large enterprises, that's kind of a little bit independent conversation sometimes. So that's kind of how I see it as the future, Sylvia. on all of it
I
coming
mean,
together.
I would love to see that, but honestly, I haven't seen much of that happening yet. But of course, I'm not in all conversations that are happening. I would love to see more of that sustainability being supported by AI, but I
Yeah.
think there's a long way to go.
Yes, yes, you are absolutely right. So I think you're absolutely right. So the future has to integrate this more and more carefully. So for example, just one or two examples, maybe I think Google, for example, is using AI to optimize, the whole data centers and the optimizations so that it can truly reduce the efficiency and the emissions, right? So to almost like 30-40%. Now, maybe that's just one example. There are also examples of, a lot of companies focused on green technology funding, green technology investments from, source to consumer supply chain process. So yes, I think the path is on. I think there are also a lot of governments where I think the green reporting is expected to happen with digital tool sets to primarily aid for more transparency and things like that. And also it brings technology and sustainability more closer together from the lens of applying it and really complementing with each other. So I would say, yeah, I think the world has just started maybe on that convergence or at least in the early convergence. But I think the more it becomes that truly technology is solving for the world problems at large and truly technology is augmenting for what the world is meant to be and for what people have to see that as an accelerator and an empowered aid and not like a technology replacing humans or like humans being eliminated and things like that. So I think that conversation narrative has to surely change, and I see that surely happening as a future business model with its convergence.
Yes. So another part of ESG is obviously the whole diversity and inclusion discussion.
Yeah.
So you have been, recognized as advancing inclusion. So what initiatives or programs have had the most impact in your view?
Yeah, I had the huge privilege and opportunity to lead inclusion for one of the earlier organizations. In fact, to say the truth, I was actually more like a client and a sales and a go-to-market kind of a person. And the leader walks in and says, "Hey, we would like business leaders to actually start leading inclusion." And I was wondering how am I going to do it, to be very honest. But I would say even the few initial conversations I had probably I may not have been in the best self. But I think I then realized very soon, I think that for me to lead this and to kind of make it a little more effective, it's very important that one, I internalize that belief system. I read a lot of things about variety of articles and the global efforts and inclusion and so many more across the industry. And that was a huge learning. And I think then the ability to relate and connect the dots was much more better for me. I mean, there is still a lot more I may have to learn and keep continuing on that inclusion leadership more and more. But I would at least say that the opportunity I had and the brief of whatever we are seeing in the industry, there are two folds I'm seeing. One is in some organizations or many large forward-looking organizations, it has definitely moved from a place of compliance or a place of generating metrics to be seen as a very strategic intent of growth or a strategic intent of how you will drive growth, equity, innovation, that kind of a mindset. So truly inclusion has become integral in the DNA, integral in how the organization has to run, and more importantly, to help, in the diverse growth, in the diverse thoughts and diverse innovation. So I've seen, organizations who are pivoting to that path. At the same time, it is also that there are organizations where they are probably in a different maturity curve where it kind of gets stuck at times with resource groups, or you create councils and it just becomes a very siloed engine, or it just runs for a few program mindset rather than a culture mindset. So the lessons learned and the programs, I feel, the journey that I've had, I think there were three opportunities to reflect on inclusion. One, to move away from a program mindset to really transform the culture of the organization. I think that was a huge opportunity by really making people accountable and internalizing that culture. So the leadership DNA framework got updated and reflected upon that inclusion has to be a DNA for every leader's success and for every leader's growth from a performing or a perishing. So if you want to grow, if you want to take a higher order roles, I think that becomes one of the leadership DNA measure and a culture maker, reflection. The other aspect that also happened, I would say, I think is, I think the recognition for us to bring leaders truly to role model. Now, if you're saying that we want to grow women leaders, I think it was very important to put them in action. So women leaders took responsibility of very strong technology practices or industry practices. I was myself an industry leader in one of that responsibility. So I think it was important to role model by action. Also, when we looked at persons with disability, it was very, very critical. Not that every one of us understand that space to that extent. So it was very important to have a person with disability leader or a person with disability. And even within that, there are 21 different disabilities. It's not like we can master the art of everything. So it was very important to make sure that we have the representatives right at the table for us to work with them, to shape with them, and innovate with them. The beautiful aspect that also happened was, because we are also a technology organization, the ability to bring inclusive products, whether it is in terms of the environment that you can create or accessibility labs or the awareness, be it for clients, be it for defining for clients an innovation product and service for an inclusion perspective. I think a lot of that we were able to connect the dots. So bringing together industry, innovation, and inclusion as a frame of reference for clients was another very important lens, I would say. But I would think from a larger industry standpoint, I mean, there is still a lot more maturity that we need to see, and with all the changes now within the the US and the various efforts that is happening by the government and all of that, we have to wait and watch. But I would say, I think a true organization that reflects on a sustained leadership of inclusion, truly has seen the benefits, and that sustenance is going to be very, very critical and important to truly know what the organization's culture ethos is. So time will tell us.
Thank you. I think it's very important to see that it's a cultural issue. It's not just a policy issue. It's actually
Exactly.
how do people behave in the organization that really makes a difference. And I
True.
agree with you, role models are incredibly important. That's why Divershefy is so focused on bringing women into boardrooms and C-suites so that we
Absolutely.
have women at the top who can role model and if you have women at the top, then, the company can truly have the younger women aspire for those kind of roles. And if you don't show that in your organization, if there's no women at the top, then you're also giving a message, which is a different message.
Agree.
All
Very
right.
true.
So, yeah, that's very important. So, in terms of startups and advisory boards, so do you see as a common challenge when organizations try to scale innovation? You work with different startups, you do work as an advisory board member, and what is it that you see as a common challenge?
One, I mean, there are two, three challenges that I've seen. One, I think, is when the startups are at the initial incubation phase and they have to move into a phase of scale. Um, I think the alignment of the VC, the venture capital, and the promoters. I think the alignment, the continued alignment of clarity, purpose, for that long-term purpose and confidence. I see that, kind of varying, or at least it's moving. It's moving targets, and that's creating a lot of conflicts and issues. So I think that is one from a scaling standpoint itself for startups. How do you make sure that that synergy stays more and more closer together? And that's going to be one of the very important scale element for success. I think that is one I observe. The second thing that I observe is also the build versus buy investment decisions. So, for example, what you continue to keep as your distinctive fabric as a startup, and thereby the decisions that you choose to have, what is within core, rather than what you see around you for various reasons, that what you come across, and then kind of quickly start diversifying and focusing and investing on those kind of aspects. So the decisions to make sure that you hold yourself tight on the build versus buy investment decisions and the capital allocation decisions on what is core identity for you vis-a-vis what you can bring the ecosystem around you. I think that's another aspect that I see from a scaling innovation challenge. The other element that I also see, I think, is it is very important to kind of create a very strong go-to-market clarity. And that is one thing I find, especially from a scaling innovation standpoint. How do you make sure that you're bringing, the right clarity with respect to the go-to-market and prioritization? That is another observation that I do have. So those are some learnings I've had working with startups and advising them. And of course, when you find a few startups who are really, good at all these aspects, I think they really flourish and they are so clear. They don't tend to get distracted by any of these aspects that come around them. I think we find them very strongly integrated with respect to culture and their clarity of thoughts. So those are some few aspects of challenge I've seen from a lens of scaling and a lens of scaling innovations.
So you are open to being on board, is that correct? As
Yes,
an independent director?
absolutely.
So what kind of organizations would you be looking for? With that, do they need to be in tech? Do they need to be AI tech? Or are you more open to other opportunities?
See, I think the huge opportunity that I've had working across the different organizations is the ability to converge business and technology, right? So, retail, consumer goods, healthcare, agriculture, industrial, I think has been very prominent focus with respect to working with various clients across the globe and the associated industries, right? So the ability to bring the business context to all of these industries and its associated technology with a very complementing element of strategy, governance, risk and compliance elements has been the strength of the experience and learning. So I would say I think those are the attributes I would probably connect it with. So retail, consumer goods, life sciences, healthcare, agri, and industrial.
Okay, so anybody listening who is looking for a board director in that kind of space with such an incredible experience background, to reach out to Shanti and try to connect with her on LinkedIn. So I have a few more questions.
Mhm.
So, what will be the next currency in this hyper technology age? So, can you explain what you mean by currency and what is this question really about?
So, as I close the last year, 2025, and moving on to 2026, all of us do a lot of reflections, I think, end of the year. So I also did one, and hence I chose to write that article as to what's the next currency. So in my mind, we used to say data is the new oil or data is the next currency, or like earlier we said internet is the next currency. So we kept moving the targets, which always associated for some reason with either the technology or data. While I think technology will always be a very strong enabler and a very strong empowered attribute in everything that we do in the world going forward, especially with the next generation community, especially all the millennials and the betas and alphas and everything that we say, including a lot of generational diversity people. The one element I feel in this hyper technology age that we see, the fundamental currency, I think, will continue to stay very core to the humanity leadership. Because I think with all the technologies that is around us, the decisions that we take, the choices that we make, the higher order road that we take, because there is going to be a choice at times you're going to make. Is the purpose important, the profit important, or a balance of all of that is important? So there's going to be a lot of enormous decisions, even at home, even in our enterprises. There's going to be a much higher order decisions that we all have to take, especially in this hypertech world that we are living in. So in my mind, the humanity leadership and the decision making abilities around various aspects, whether it is compassion, whether it is curiosity, whether it is the kindness, the care, and more than all, the profit purpose equations, all of that will play a much stronger role in our decision making ability, so that we truly, move forward in a right perspective in leaving the world a better place.
I think that's a wonderful ending to our conversation. Thank you, Shanta, for sharing your story and your insights. And for the audience, thank you for tuning in today to the Divershefy Inspiring Leaders podcast. If Shanta's stories resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe and share this podcast. Connect with Shanta on LinkedIn, as I said before, and join us again when we continue to spotlight leaders who are shaping a more inclusive and innovative future like Shanta does. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Sylvia. Wonderful conversation. And thank you for having me once again. Take care. Bye.